a faucet, an electric door lock, an airplane. What do they all have in common? Carmel, Indiana, home to 130 corporate headquarters like Delta Faucet, security provider Allegiant, and Republic Airways. Learn more about the city's transformational growth over the decades, how its low cost of living, schools, quality of life, and vibrant arts community all add up to a robust economy. The Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC, is next. And I am pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Sue Finkam, the mayor of Carmel. And Mayor Finkam, really appreciate you taking the time to join us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. So honored to be on your show.
Well, so much going on in Carmel, and so much has been going on in Carmel, it seems like, for years and years in terms of development and things that have been transformational really for that city and that area. You're no stranger to public service or politics in Carmel. You were on the city council, I think, for 10 years. So you're very, very knowledgeable about what's going on. But as mayor, that's obviously a different role. Anything surprised you?
I knew people loved our community, but I've gotten an even deeper appreciation of that since being mayor. People are just so thrilled with our community and being a part of it, whether they're a business investor or whether they're residential or visitors. It's just really been an honor to be able to represent the brand, so to speak, of Carmel. And, we did a community survey last year, got 7,200 responses, which was just a huge response rate. And 98% said they love the quality of life. You can't get much better than that.
Yeah. As you look at your experience as a city councilor, has that helped you in your role as mayor?
Oh, absolutely. Being able to come into this role and understand, well, first know the department heads, understand the work that had been done in the previous 12 years as I was part of city council. And then, having been educated by Mayor Brainard too in that process, much easier path. I cannot imagine coming into this cold. It would be a much slower start. We were able to do things faster and quicker and better as a result of that experience, for sure.
Your predecessor, Jim Brainard, 7 terms in that role, and was, to me, a very forceful leader, had a definite vision of what he wanted Carmel to become. Talk about the legacy that he leaves, because, he certainly had his detractors, but I don't think anyone can argue with the fact that there's just transformational change has happened in Carmel that has changed the trajectory, really, of the city.
Could not agree more. He was a fantastic visionary and really stuck to the principles of a walkable community, to bring people together, to create community. But also, I don't think he gets enough credit for just the overall vision for the entire built environment. It's not just the roundabout and the transportation network. It's not just the Monon Trail or the buildings. All of it together is incredibly inspiring as someone who's visiting and walking. And that's what we hear, like, I just can't believe this place is real. It's not Disney World. It's a real thriving community. It's real people that are here. And I don't think he gets enough credit for all of that pulled together into one vision.
Doing that is not easy. It sounds, once projects are finished, everybody says, hey, great. But especially, people generally speaking don't like change. This was a lot of change. However positive it was, people don't like change. How challenging is it, in your view, as a mayor or a leader, to get the community to buy into dramatic change?
It's very challenging. Even removing a stop sign sometimes is highly controversial. So I think you have to start with education, give them proof of concept sometimes, and then build on that. His consistency, being in office for 28 years certainly led to a greater ability to create change in our community. Having supportive city councils for that entire time as well helped. And, having business leaders here who could point to the fact that this built environment also helped them thrive was incredibly helpful to help, the overall transformation of the community as well.
How do you describe Carmel to, when you're making pitches, maybe it's to a business or folks who want or considering moving or relocating elsewhere? What's the pitch that you give to folks to get them to come to Carmel?
Well, first of all, we try to get them to Carmel because to see the environment and experience it is unlike any other verbal or audio pitch I could do. You really have to experience to understand it. But we talk about our incredibly talented workforce. 75% of our residents have bachelor's degrees, and at one point we were the highest or second highest number of master's degrees in the country. And so that type of educated workforce is, very attractive for those who are looking to bring headquarters here, knowledge workers, tech jobs, and the like. We also talked about our low cost of living. We're the fifth lowest tax rate in the state of Indiana, which is the fifth lowest state as far as fifth most favorable state in the country for our property tax environment. That's certainly appealing to those coming from higher tax environments. But the thing that really gets everybody is our quality of life, and that is the safety. And the survey I mentioned earlier, safety by far outpaced every other parameter, including our amazing magnet schools and our cost of living. The safety of our environment was by far the number one thing people are looking for. We're also an incredible environment for healthcare, and that was the one metric when we asked, why do you move here? Why do you stay here? The fact that we have so much high quality healthcare here was the one metric where people said actually grew over time, where that's the reason they really stay here. You've got incredible access to amazing physicians and research, and that's an attraction for people for Carmel.
As you look at Carmel as a headquarters city, I know Mayor Brainard, I talked to him on a number of occasions about that and the ability to attract corporate headquarters. Is that still a focus in terms of economic development and business development? Do you kind of lean toward attracting those headquarters operations?
Yes, absolutely remains a focus. And as we've looked at the states around us, Indiana pales in comparison to Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois. It's a number of Fortune 500 companies. So we feel like Carmel, and really only Carmel, is positioned for regional and national headquarters, and especially along that US 31 corridor.
Yeah.
It is an opportunity galore for the next 20, 30 years to redevelop that space.
Yeah. As you look at Hamilton County, I continue to be amazed as you look at the county, as a whole. You've got Carmel, you've got Noblesville, Westfield, Fishers. Each has, to me, seems to have its own kind of distinctive brand, if you will. How would you describe the Carmel brand?
I think the one word I would use for that is aspirational. People come here because they have a dream. They have a dream to get their kids in a fantastic school system and give them the best start they can. They have a dream to start a business and have access to incredible workforce. They have a dream to get incredible quality of life for their family where they can create special memories. And ours is aspirational. Mm-hmm. And I'm so thrilled that we have Fishers, Noblesville, Westfield around us, Zionsville to the west as well, that have their own unique identities, and we support each other. Mayor Scott Willis and I at Westfield have a running joke. He says, you're welcome for all those hotel rooms that Grand Park has sent down to Carmel. I'm like, you're welcome for all those houses that Carmel has sent to you because we are almost out of land. So it's a great symbiotic relationship. Those are great mayors around me, and I learn from them and laugh with them, and I really appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, the relationship with those neighboring mayors. I'm sure there's a collaborative piece, but also competitive as well.
Oh, sure. And there always will be. But again, these cities weren't built in vacuums, right? They've been able to benefit from Carmel's success early, and we're able to benefit from their success here now. And we need to make sure that we're always challenging each other to be the best that we could be, because it will be helpful to each other. And I've particularly enjoyed working with them on either economic development opportunities or policy initiatives. Mayor Fadness in Fishers is such a leader in the Central Indiana Regional Development Authority. And, just being able to work together on issues where we can come together collectively to represent our residents is really meaningful. And I think it's also going to be impactful down the road.
Is there, in your view, as you look at Central Indiana, the collective counties that make up the region, it's always, and it's not just here, it's elsewhere around the state, that cooperation always isn't what it needs to be, maybe in a region. How do you sense, or how do you view the collaborative environment, if you will, among multiple counties that make up Central Indiana?
Well, I think anytime you're working with a group of, we'll say, quasi-competitors, if you will, there's maybe a tendency to have a scarcity mindset, right? There's few dollars. I need to buckle down and have my community, company, whatever, position for those few dollars. And I think what I've been impressed about is as these leaders have come together in these various meetings, whether it be with AIM or CERTA, that doesn't exist so much. It's really about how do we position Central Indiana as a leader in the Midwest, in the United States, and how do we work together to make sure that we're positioning our communities for a bright future. And that's been really heartwarming for me and appreciated.
Is there, you talked about attracting corporate headquarters to Carmel. As you look more broadly about Carmel and the region and where we sit now in 2025, as you look going forward, are there opportunities, out there that you see are especially attractive or things that Central Indiana can go after as a region to improve things here?
I still think corporate headquarters for a variety of our entities are top of pile. Life sciences certainly offers opportunity given Lily's presence here and our hospital's presence here. I think we can continue to still pursue retail, especially retail that's important to our residents and their quality of life. I believe we still need to be having conversations about water and energy as we go forward as well, and make sure we're using data to make decisions around those areas to make sure we're going to be competitive for those bigger companies that want to make Central Indiana their home.
Yeah. As you look at that issue, infrastructure, it isn't necessarily as fun to talk about as the 500 or 1,000 employee economic development deal, but how important it's come into focus, certainly in the Boone County area in terms of water. How important or how critical do you think those issues are, water and energy, going forward?
Well, very critical. As we attract other business and this creates more of a demand in both of those systems, we have to make sure that we don't price out our residents and their ability to, again, follow their dreams and what they want to do. We have to make sure that we, again, we are short-sighted and just planning for today and are really planning for the next decade or beyond to make sure that Central Indiana thrives for a very, very long time. And I think we're just at the precipice of some really important conversations. We haven't yet, I don't see where we've really yet pulled everybody together in a meaningful way statewide and had big plans put in place. But I know our leaders are talking about that at the State House, and I appreciate that.
As you look at growth, with which certainly you're dealing with there in Carmel, how do you balance? You want to keep that quality of life and what makes Carmel special, but yet you want to look at growth opportunities. I know Mayor Stair in Zionsville is a big issue, certainly there in that community. How do you? What factors do you look at to kind of maintain that balance?
Well, first and foremost, that's why I did that survey last year, was also understand what our residents wanted of their own community, and so understand that safety is a top priority, that we're going to fund it as such. So we do have essential services that are incumbent upon us to provide, and we're going to provide them at a high level. And then from a growth perspective, when we look at our future, it's almost all infill and redevelopment moving forward. We don't have big pastures of green corn, or you could potentially look at as future development. So we're looking at making sure we have mixed use ventures that are flexible and, again, could go into these older areas. When you look at US 31, it's really a time capsule, how Carmel interacted with its land in the 1980s and the 1990s. And it's time to give that a fresh coat of paint, so to speak, so that we can position that for the future. But that's a priority. It has long been part of our ability to provide high cost of services, it's long been our opportunity to provide high quality services at a lower cost. And so we have to make sure that we are reinventing that to keep that important.
So with limited land, limited space, you have to be more selective when you're looking at economic development deals?
We do have to be more selective, and we also are looking closely at the way we incentivize projects that are coming for us. The challenge for our development partners and the city is that our cost of land is very, very high in Carmel. The cost to build something right now is very, very high between the cost of capital, labor, and materials. And our tax environment is changing. And so you look at all those things, you want to make sure that you don't give away the farm, so to speak, and you're actually doing something that's very fiscally responsible and transparent to the community members, so they can see the value that they get, not only in what comes into that, but also how they can see that that's helping contribute to the economy.
Yeah. We talked about the Carmel brand earlier. One thing I did want to mention is that whole brand around arts and culture and the development downtown in what is now downtown Carmel. How important has that been? I know when the Palladium and some of that development came along, there were people in the region who didn't necessarily like it. They said, why are you doing that in Carmel when we've got downtown Indianapolis? But I think you could point to a number of things that suggest that that's been really part of the Carmel renaissance, or the Carmel brand, if you will, arts and culture.
Absolutely. Investment in the Carmel and Carmel Center for the Performing Arts is in, I should say now, the Allied Solutions Center for the Performing Arts to get the new naming right. It has been absolutely integral to our success. Arts and culture attract an educated workforce, and it's been helpful then to make sure that we're attracted to businesses and industry as well.
Much more ahead with Carmel Mayor Sue Finkam. When we return, we'll talk about growing up or younger years in Michigan, the move to Indiana and Carmel, and much more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
We build Indiana. The Laborers International Union of North America are men and women building roads and bridges to get Hoosiers where they're going today and a new energy infrastructure that will keep Indiana competitive tomorrow. LIUNA's over 12,000 statewide members also grow local economies, earning good union wages, shopping where they live and work, and paying taxes. We build Indiana for good jobs and stronger communities. The Laborers International Union of North America. We are LIUNA.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Carmel Mayor Sue Finkam. She is in the first term of her administration as mayor. I guess what, Mayor? You're in the second year of the first term. Is that right?
Yep, you got it.
Good. Let's talk about kind of the early years. You've been in Carmel a long time, but didn't grow up there. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in northern Michigan, about an hour and 15 minutes south of the Mackinac Bridge.
Okay, Roscommon, right?
Correct.
Played golf up there, some of those great Michigan golf courses. What was growing up like in Michigan?
It was awesome. Running through the woods, picking blueberries, chasing wild animals, just having a great time. It was carefree. You had to make sure you had the right friends, one with a motorcycle, one with a horse, one with a boat, one with a canoe. But no, it was really, really nice. And I do miss the Michigan summers up there. They're incredible.
Yeah. What were your interests? Were you studious, athletic, arts? What was your younger years like in that regard?
I would say academics came easy. I was a music nerd, so I was in everything in music or choir class. I was also played softball and played basketball as well.
Uh-huh.
And there's no winter sport for girls. Well, there was downhill skiing for girls, but I was a skier, so I didn't do anything in the winter.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Who were did you have mentors? I mean, most people, their parents, they're mentors, but as you think back to the people who really shaped you at a younger age, who were they?
I have to look to my teachers, just incredible. We were in a consolidated school district that was known for its academics, and small school. My graduating class was 126. And I just had real special teachers that took a particular interest in me, and I will always be thankful for that. And I think that those relationships are so important for our kids. My mom was a church secretary. My dad was could hardly read, but worked in the oil fields as a mechanic. And so I didn't have any business mentors. I don't remember any females, running businesses. So I really looked at teachers, and of course, as you got along in your career, college professors to really, paint a picture for me.
And you've got an entrepreneurial bent because you started a company here in Indiana, Firestarter, right? Talk about Firestarter, the company, and how that came about.
I did. I actually started in 2010, and it sat there for 10 years without me doing anything, where I kept thinking, maybe this is the year. Maybe this is the year. But finally in 2020, this is my time to see if I can make a go of it. And in the middle of the pandemic, expectations were low. Maybe that's what I needed. I don't know. Yeah. But I just, have been blessed to be in healthcare marketing for many years. I really wanted to focus on that. And right out of the gate, got three wonderful clients, and then knew this was something I could sink my teeth into, and telling a company's story and helping them promote it and communicate it and internalize that brand with employees. I love that, and try to work on a little bit of that here at the city of Carmel as well.
Yeah. Well, again, thinking back to your Michigan days, you went to college at Central Michigan, right? At Chippewa?
Yes. Fire up, Chips.
Yeah. Why? Any particular reason why Central Michigan?
Well, my father died my first year, my senior year of high school. And we looked at Michigan as a possibility, and that just pretty much shut the door on that. It was 3.5 hours away. Central is just a little over an hour. They had a fantastic sports medicine program, better than Michigan's. And so that's what I was interested in, and just made the decision to go a little bit closer to home. And I like that smaller campus feel. It was perfect for me. I loved the major. We had some national leaders in sports medicine that were curriculum directors and program directors, and really opened the doors for me to other opportunities in sports medicine that I don't know that I would have been made aware of had I gone to Michigan.
Yeah. Where did your interest in politics and public service? When did that kind of spark?
I've been using my sports medicine degree and was helping injured workers around the country in ergonomics consulting, putting on-site rehab and fitness centers in at different manufacturing facilities. And had a little guy at home, 2 years old, decided I'm done with this travel. And when I came back to what I would call home, in that, there 7 days a week, I started looking around and seeing that our state government wasn't paying our schools and wasn't paying our local governments in a timely manner. Like, who's running the show? How does this work? And who's elected? And I don't even know if I knew if I was Republican or Democrat at that point. I just hadn't focused on it. But I got very interested very fast in how cities and towns in our state were supported. And thankfully, got some education for the Lugar series, which is just celebrating its 35th anniversary. And, that teaches you, about being a volunteer on a campaign, a finance person, a campaign consultant, a candidate, and all the role. And I just felt like I was going to use that experience and my marketing and PR and kind of business development background to help candidates. And, became dissatisfied with the local candidate here, and kept saying to Mayor Brainard at the time, hey, whoever runs against that guy, let me know. I'd like to help him out. And no one was running. I decided to throw my hat in the ring because I felt Carmel deserved something different.
Yeah. As you look at the climate in politics these days, certainly at the national level, but even to an extent locally as well, your take on that? There's a lot of conversation about, and with social media and the vitriol that's out there on political campaigns and everybody fighting and arguing. Is that limiting the quality of candidates who are willing to throw themselves in the ring like you did at one time?
Yeah, I think so. I think in a way it does. And I think it also limits female candidates. But I believe discourse is good. This conversation is good. People dissatisfied with status quo is good. I believe that we should all have different opinions in a room and talk about it. What's hard is when they get hateful. And I think you have to grow a thicker skin. You have to really double down on what your values are and what matters to you, and make sure that you can protect the core of you and go through the process. I tend to be highly competitive. I want to win when I put my whole heart and soul into something. So I think, that's helpful. That type of personality is helpful. But I think we can all do better at serving each other in a kinder, gentler way a little bit. Mm-hmm. My run for mayor was pretty contentious for the general election, and I'm not looking forward to going through that again. I have got calluses where I didn't think I'd have to have them, but again, I've grown as a result of that. But I think that I hate to see. I don't know how we can get worse. Going forward, it's pretty rough.
Yeah, I'm sure there were multiple people. Anyone in particular, as you think back to mentors or those who inspired you in the political front, who would you point to?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Condoleezza Rice. I just think she led with a tremendous poise, highly educated, polished professional. I also think locally here, when I started in Carmel working, I was at Clarion North Medical Center, which is now IU Health. And Dan Evans, who was CEO of Clarion at the time, said, I want you to get close to local government. And so, working with Mayor Brainard and his team was highly educational for me. Mm-hmm. And so it was inspirational to see his vision. So I have to give him that credit. But I think, I'm a lifelong learner. And so I watch and I pay attention to a lot of candidates and electeds. And I try to find out what's the best, what suits me, and learn from all of them.
Yeah, you mentioned Condoleezza Rice. You mentioned not having really too many role models or examples of women in politics when you kind of got into it. The fact that you are the mayor of in Carmel, Indiana, and other women who, achieve political success, how important is that to attracting more female leaders in politics and government?
I think it's important. And shame on me for maybe not recognizing it sooner. But when I got in office here as mayor, I had so many young girls just come up and want to talk to the female mayor, right? And I always campaigned that I'm the qualified, credible candidate who happens to be female. But for a lot of our younger members, and actually women of all ages, it's really, really important. And so that is touching to me. It means a lot to me. We recently hosted a She Leads conference, 100% paid for through private support. We had to close the doors at 350 attendees for the professional women, 175 registrants for the middle school girls. And we're looking to build on that. The positivity in that room was fantastic. And I told all of them, the Center for American Women in Politics say women have to be asked to run before they're ever going to stick their hat in the ring. And so I told all of them, you've just been asked. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, we need diverse voices in the room. And women have sometimes a different voice than some of our male counterparts. Not better, but different. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important we can work together.
As we wrap up looking forward, I know you've got a lot on your plate certainly now, but as you look at the next 3 to 5 years, let's say in Carmel, what are kind of the priorities and the things you really want to focus on to move the city forward?
First and foremost, I've been treating people as an infrastructure piece, just as important as our paths and our trails and our buildings and our roundabout network. So really pouring into our incredibly diverse community here, which has over 110 languages spoken from 90 different countries. And I love the variety of people we meet here. And secondly, I would say that US 31 corridor that we discussed earlier, finding redevelopment opportunities and investment opportunities along that corridor is absolutely critical for us. We got really, really low vacancy in our central core, and we know how to build a special walkable place, and we can do that same thing over the US 31 corridor. I think lastly is then completing our central corridor. We got a few key pieces along the Monon Trail down here that we want to make sure that we can find special projects to go in there to create that Monon Trail experience that people love.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned US 31, kind of looking in your crystal ball, what you'd like to see that become or how you envision 31. It's changed a lot, obviously, in the last decade. How do you see in the next decade what US 31 becomes with Carmel Westfield and then on up north and the improvements that have been made in the thoroughfare going north?
Right now, as we've traveled along that 5 to 6 mile corridor, you see a lot of product that's 1980s and 1990s built, offices that are not attractive to today's worker. And so we like to see more infill, so more residential, both for sale and for rent in that space. We want to see more retail that that's interspersed with more corporate headquarters and regional headquarter opportunities. So much more vibrant area. It is our gateway to Hamilton County from 96th Street North, and we need to make sure that it shines and so shows as such. And again, pursuing some unicorns a little bit with some of the Fortune 500 brands that are out there that are looking for places just like Carmel, because Carmel is a place where residents have chosen to be, people have chosen to invest here and don't want to leave. And we want to make sure we can invite more in.
Yep. And there's always something I forget to ask or to talk about. And you mentioned housing. That was one, because for cities and towns all over Indiana, housing is such a huge issue. And I think, as I remember or recall reading of a task force that's really focused on housing there. Talk about that. How big an issue? Because I think a lot of people are surprised that housing is such a huge issue, but when it comes to economic development and the things you want to do, how would you characterize the housing situation there in Carmel and kind of what you need to do to address things?
When we were campaigning, we heard over and over again concerns about housing. Either there's no housing here in Carmel, or it's too expensive, or I'm concerned about the amount of rental property you have. And I didn't have answers at the ready, because it's a complex situation that's not just a Carmel problem or an Indiana problem, but a nationwide problem. We're millions of housing units short across the country. So I promised them that we would take a deep dive into that if elected. And so one of the first things I did was start a housing task force with voices from the industry as well as our residential voices. And we looked at, our average house here is, just shy of $600,000. That puts a lot of people out of our market. Our apartment complexes are, above 95% occupancy, which means full to an apartment owner. And so houses go up for sale here, and they're sold with one this weekend, 26 offers sold within a 24-hour period with $50,000 above list. And the list was $100,000 before, as compared to last year, higher than last year. So a hot housing market here, which is great if you're an owner, but it's very hard if you're trying to get a young professional here to fulfill a workforce opportunity goal. So we got a lot of great information, spent 8 months studying it, had some recommendations. One of the recommendations is we can't stop this conversation. So we just converted it into a full-time commission, and we're looking here in May to pick up the conversation and look at housing, land cost, and again, what it's doing with our workforce.
Carmel Mayor Sue Finkam, first-term mayor in the city of Carmel. Mayor, it's been great to catch up with you, and it's always great to see how Carmel continues to change and evolve, and appreciate your leadership. And again, appreciate you taking the time for the podcast.
Thank you. It's been my honor, Gary.
All right. And thank you for listening to this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast, presented by PNC. We are a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can listen to all of our episodes, all 200 plus episodes, and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.